Um, on the case of how aggressively should a bank pursue AI, um, I found myself to agree with Naomi. This case is kind of similar to last week's in the sense that should a company kind of reduce its balance sheet in exchange for human interaction and or reducing human interaction and AI integration. Um, I feel like it was easy to agree with Naomi, especially given my stance of last week's, where I find customer service and um, employee pretty much sentiment being based on human relation and just their livelihood. Um, so it was even easier given us in a place like banking where so much of the relationships built in banking are based on trust, um, person to person, and it's a big customer service place, and not to mention there's a lot of regulatory risk with privacy and whatnot. Um, but the Miami warns that if AI doesn't, if they integrate it the way they're planning to, it can move fast and break things. Which is true because given the regulatory space of banking, there's a lot of legal and reputational kind of issues that one can run into. Um, and also, like I mentioned before, there's such an emphasis in banking on customer relationships, and I feel like if you pretty much give a person the space to trust in a robot rather than a person, that's not going to benefit customer sentiment or kind of build that trust that's so needed. Um, but I do, I do love the idea of using AI for the kind of like personal identification verification kind of phase. I feel like that's something that people find good and actually successful, and they don't really mind having to be on the phone with somebody if they run into any issues, and rather have like an AI chatbot that they can just go through and figure stuff out like that in the short term. So I feel like cutting that part out would be great. You can cut out some of the customer service people, but I feel like the people in the higher up roles where customer trust is so needed, you can't get rid of them because that's just not what you do in banking. I feel like, and if you do eventually do that, where society comes to a point where they can trust AI, um, maybe at that point you can kind of do that. But I feel like right now there's not a lot of faith in AI in terms of what people do with their financials because they're already uptight about it. So, and also in banking, there's a lot of reputational risk with the stuff that goes on in the business, like the business world and news and legal stuff. If you're under fire for something, that could really affect a lot of your, that honestly, your balance sheet more than AI reduction would do. So, um, yeah. But AI definitely has potential. I feel like rushing into it, like Michael wants to do, would kind of hurt them in the short term. Obviously, it can drive up innovation, but you got to look at the cost benefit. I feel like what it would do to consumers and what it would do to the workforce would kind of just not be as beneficial as a reduction on the balance sheet. And that's even a risk in itself, too, because the AI is not really tested and owned by them for the most part. So, yep, that's all I got.